Excuse me. Hey, this is Anthony Elmore, President of the Proud Black Buddhist World Association. I kind of got into my new song, Buddhist song called The Lotus Sutra Boom Boom Boom. Today, my lecture is Elmore takes SGI African American leader Bobby Hudson to Buddhist Ku along with SGI members. So go back and get you something to sip on and come check Elmore, take them to Buddhist Ku. Check in a few minutes. My lecture today is Anthony Elmore takes SGI African American leader Bobby Hudson and SGI members to Buddhist Ku. Let's get into it. Now, today is Sunday, October the 26th, 2014. Now, I want you all to look at something on the Huffington Post website. I don't know how familiar you are with the Huffington Post, but the Huffington Post is one of the largest news bloggers in the world. They won a Pulitzer Prize. They're all over the world like CNN, but it's called the Huffington Post. And I want you to read one of the articles that's been in the Huffington Post this week. Now, the article is called 5 Things About Slavery You Probably Didn't Learn in Social Studies. Now, one of the reasons we mention this is because Mr. Bobby Hudson and many SGI members learned Buddhism from the paradigm of Japanese people. And when you learn Buddhism from the paradigm of Japanese people, you will find that the Japanese have extricated all of the African and African American history from Buddhism. So you don't find or learn a type of Buddhism in the SGI or Nichiren Shoshu or Nichiren Shu or the Japanese organizations that's inclusive of black culture and history. They make it a point to stay away from such subjects. Now, we at the Proud Black Buddhist World Association, we believe that culture and history, or our African and African American culture and history, which is actually a part of Buddhism, should be inclusive. Now, what this article talks about today, and what it mentions, it says that it was an author by the name of, last name was Baptist, and what he went and did research on is one of the things that they never tell you about in social studies class about America. And that is that in 1836, it says that half of America's GDP, or gross domestic product, came from slavery in the cotton business. In other words, all of the wealth that America owns to this very day, the reason America is the richest country in the world is because America used slave labor in order to gain its wealth. And what you have today is that you have, now this is the difference in the wealth of blacks and whites. White people have 95 cents to 1 nickel, or 5 cents that our African Americans have. Now, to understand the relationship of the racism what slavery did, and why whites are so much further than blacks, you have to understand the law of cause and effect. And Buddhism teaches about the law of cause and effect. Now, what happens is, when we begin to bring up what happened in history, people says, oh, you're being racist, oh, you should not go with a black thing, you should not bring these things up. How? Now, but when you study Buddhism, Buddhism actually teaches about these things, because in order to understand life, you must understand life from the past, the present, and the future. Now, those of you who study, and Mr. Bobby Hudson and many of the SGI leaders, they only study what Daisaku Ikeda teaches, but we at the Proud Black Buddhists, we teach history, we teach culture, and we teach science, and we give you a complete understanding. Now, I want you, who's got a Go Show, to get the Go Show, and the Go Show is called The Capital of Decrease. Now, in the Capital of Decrease, it says, and let me find that. It says that, let's see, let's get the right paper that I got this wrote down here. Did I bring it? Let's see here. Now, it says this: a person of wisdom is not one who practices Buddhism apart from worldly affairs, but rather one who thoroughly understands the principles by which the world is governed. Now, in the Buddhist teachings, the Lotus Sutra is a teachings that teaches us to understand how our world is governed. Now, for example, this is how this whole concept come about. I think about the 23rd of October, Mr. Bobby Hudson wrote me a letter, and we're going to review his letter. And he says this, before we get off into the history and the culture, this is what Mr. Bobby Hudson writes. He says, I can see it is becoming pointless, a pointless endeavor to convince you to get off your rant about how President Ikeda is racist and how the people of Ghana were hurt so many years ago by having a black man removed as a national leader. It seems you are stuck in the past and will not move into the more important issues about how black people can use Buddhism to lead the most fulfilling lives. Now, what I want you to do, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to listen to the mentality of this SGI member, Mr. Bobby Hudson, who writes. He says, it seems that you are stuck in the past and will not move onto more important issues. Now, and then he also says, you call Ikeda racist, were hurt so many years ago. Wait a minute. Now, I presented a video showing just a few years ago, about 25 years ago, how SGI leader Daisaku Ikeda used brainwashing in Ghana. He used brainwashing, he used racism. He told the people in Ghana, do not use the Go Show. Do not study the Go Show. Don't study speeches of leaders in Ghana, but only study the speeches of SGI leader Daisaku Ikeda. Now, Mr. Hudson writes, he says he used the word so many years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, you who are out there, can you remember 25 years ago? Can you remember in 1989? Well, if you can't remember, into 1989, about 1989, there was a young man. His name was Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson had the Bad Tour. Now, that's not so long ago that we had the Bad Tour in 1989, that Michael Jackson was on tour with his Bad Tour going all over the world. In 1989, African-American General Colin Powell was nominated for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Mr. Hudson does not understand that Colin Powell is still living. Daisaku Ikeda is still living. The people in Ghana who Daisaku Ikeda treated like a colonialist, who treated with racism, these people are still living. That we live, they are our contemporaries. Even though Michael Jackson is not living, he is our contemporary. Mr. Hudson says, I'm talking about something in the past. This is not the past. This is contemporary. Sir, you need to go back to school and learn the meaning of contemporary. Contemporary means today. In 1989, the movie Glory came out. I think Denzel Washington was in the movie Glory. Denzel Washington is our contemporary. He's still living. In 1989, Spike Lee came out with the movie called Do the Right Thing. Spike Lee is still living. This is contemporary, Mr. Bobby Hudson. You cannot go and just dismiss what Daisaku Ikeda did 25 years ago. 25 years ago is not that long, sir. Prince was around and the movie We Are the World. All this stuff was happening about that time. This is our contemporary generation. Also, Mr. Hudson, at the same time that Daisaku Ikeda was doing his dirtiness in Ghana, the Prime Minister of Japan, Nagasaki, made bad statements about racism against black people. At the same time, the Kyoto Party of the SGI had supported. They're part of the Liberal Democratic Party, and all these guys that got together, and some of the racists in Japan was doing some things, talking bad about black people. So, sir, you need to go back to school. Now, let's look at further what Mr. Hudson said. Now, he also says, it seems you are stuck in the past. Well, we clear I'm not in the past, because when you start talking about what happened just in our contemporary age, it's not the past. And will not move until more important issues about how black people can use Buddhism to lead the most fulfilling lives possible. Then he goes on to say, he said, first you say, Nichiren never expressed the concept of actual proof. Yes, I did. Yes, I did, Mr. Hudson. Nichiren Shonin never, only one time in the Go Show, does he use the word actual proof. Actual proof is a propagation tool that is exclusive to the SGI. Nichiren Shonin is not running around here talking about the actual proof, the way you guys are doing. Nichiren Shonin says proof of fact, sir. There is a difference. He said what I say. It's not what I say. You go into a courtroom and you don't have no proof of facts, and you try to prove a case without the proof of facts, sir. You have to prove proof of facts. Who do you think you're talking to, sir? You need to go back to school and learn English. You saying what I say. Now, he said, first you say that Nichiren never expressed the concept of actual proof in the Go Show, but he does use the concept proof of fact, which you say is different than actual proof. It's not what I say, it's what in English. It's what we know in history. Let me give you an explanation, Mr. Bobby Hudson, the difference between actual proof and proof of facts. You say that the SGI has given you all of this actual proof. Actual proof and proof of facts is different. For example, to have a proof of fact, you must have what is called empirical data. For example, if you compare yourself to everyone in your family, or the students who you went to school with, your colleagues who went to school with you, and you started SGI and they were not SGI, they Christian, you Christian, you'd have to show proof of fact that you got a better job than they got, you got a better education than they got, you better got cars than they got. You have to show empirical data. There are studies, empirical studies about ethnic groups. For example, years ago, the Indian from India was the highest paid ethnic group in America. But they did studies on this. This was empirical data to show how the Indian came and how they achieved higher than any other ethnic group in America. You'd have to also show, say, do a comparative analysis. Say, if you took Bobby Hudson, say at 18 years old, and you took, say, a Jewish child at 18 years old, that Jewish child and you as a Buddhist, you must show that how you achieved on a higher standard, higher than that Jewish person or higher than that Christian person. That is how you analyze proof of fact. Now, for example, if you study the Indians from India, most are Brahmins. Most come from a Hindu system. The Hindu system gave an advantage to those with lighter skins, or gave lighter, and the blacks who were the Sutras or the Chandelas who Nichiren associate with, they did not have the advantages. So the black people in India, they're called Dalits. The Dalits were discriminated against. They had the caste system in India. Even to this very day, they have the caste system. So there are other reasons or other cause and effect reasons why one group would be higher than the next group. But Mr. Bobby Hudson, nor does the SGI present any empirical data. Even if you go to Japan and you compare an SGI Buddhist against other sets of Buddhists, and you got to look at the education, you got to look at how they prospered, are they more wealthier than other groups? You will find that data would not prove that the SGI has more benefits or actual proof, as you call it. You have not presented any evidence whatsoever in Japan or in America. You've not presented any empirical data. Empirical data, that is what is called proof of facts. That is how Buddhism judges things based on proof of fact and not this so-called actual proof. This is not a part of Nichiren teachings. This is SGI culture. Mr. Bobby Hudson writes, why are you so against telling people that if they are practicing this Buddhism correctly, it will become evident in their own life through actual proof? I don't get it. I don't think actual proof is a bad, difficult, or negative concept in the least. As I stated in my last email, Nichiren even needed actual proof to determine that he was the true votary of the law. What do you think the Tatsunakuchi persecution was all about? Nichiren constantly states in the Gosho that practitioners' prayers will be answered without a doubt. Isn't a practitioner having his prayers answered actual proof of the validity of what Nichiren claims? Again, I am not asking anyone to follow President Ikeda, getting encouragement about this Buddhism from President Ikeda is my personal choice. I am asking people to follow the law and not the person. My only goal in all of this is assuring my black people practice this Buddhism correctly, so they attain Buddhahood to show other black people how to attain Buddhahood. Because you are so bent on taking President Ikeda down and not helping black people understand the best way to use this Buddhism really makes me question your agenda. What is your reason for practicing this Buddhism? And he ends it, Bobby Hudson. Now, Mr. Hudson, let's get a clear understanding of the Buddha's teachings. Now, let's get one thing straight. I am not against teaching anyone the value of the Buddhist practice. This is why I practice Buddhism, because Buddhism can help people to achieve in life, to become happy. That's why the Buddha came into this world. Now, I am not against people showing actual proof, but I am against any religious organization or any doctrine that's being used in a way to manipulate people. And the way that SGI used the concept of actual proof, they are using superficial means or distorted teachings in order to teach people Buddhism. They are not really teaching people Buddhism, they are teaching Ikeda-ism. And there's a difference between Buddhism, that is the teachings of the Buddha, Shakyamuni, and the teachings of Daisaku Ikeda. Now, let's put this thing in common sense terms, and let's bring this lecture or this teaching education home. Now, let's talk about this concept of actual proof. Now, if, and listen very carefully, Mr. Bobby Hudson, if you want to teach black people or any kind of people how to get to the moon, if you want to teach people how to get to the moon, you got to first of all learn rocket science. Now, I don't care how much you talk about, well, I got this benefit and I got that benefit and I chatted and I got A, B, C, and D. If you want to take someone to the moon, then brother, you're going to have to learn rocket science, because, hey, an airplane cannot take you to the moon. Now, if you want to become a happy person, or if you want to become an enlightened person, then you must go to the person who was enlightened. And the person who was enlightened was Shakyamuni Buddha. He is the Buddha, and you must study the teachings of the Buddha. Not the teachings of Daisaku Ikeda, but the teachings of the Buddha. Now, where do you find the teachings of the Buddha? The Buddha left his highest teachings in the Gosho. Now, in the Gosho. Now, he left them in the Lotus Sutra rather, but you can learn much about the Lotus Sutra in the Gosho. Now, Mr. Hudson, what I'd like you to do, now, it's right there, and the SGI have the books, but they are manipulative in their teachings. Now, for example, if you look at the major writings of Nichiren Shonin, and I would like for you to go to the Gosho, and I'd like all of you, go to the Gosho, and the Gosho is called the Capital of Decrease. But before we go to the Gosho, Capital of Decrease, I would like for you to go to the Gosho, I think it's reply to Lady Nachimyo, or the true aspect of Gohanzan. Now, first of all, this is how Nichiren Shonin explains how we get the correct teachings. He says, first of all, he says, the first volume of Concentration and Insight says, quote, how does one hear, believe, and practice the perfect teachings to attain perfect enlightenment? The first volume of On Concentration and Insight says, quote, to believe in the perfect teachings means to awaken faith through doctrine and to make faith the basis of practice. Now, Mr. Hudson, again, you don't have faith in Daisaku Ikeda. You really not necessarily have to have faith in the SGI, but you should put faith in the doctrine. And what is the doctrine? The doctrine is the Lotus Sutra. Now, Shakyamuni again left on the great concentration and insight, says to believe in the perfect teachings means to awaken faith through doctrine and to make faith the basis of practice. Now, if we are going to teach anybody, whether African Americans or anybody, this Buddhism, we must first of all awaken the faith by teaching them doctrine. This is what the Gosho says. You awaken faith through doctrine. You don't awaken faith through Daisaku Ikeda. You awaken faith through the doctrines that the Buddha left. He left doctrines. Now, it's the same. If you want to teach African Americans how to get to the moon, or if you want to teach them how to become successful in business or any endeavor, you must teach them laws and concepts. You must teach the proper education. If you don't educate people properly, they are not going to begin to understand how to get along in our world. Now, let's go into words of the Buddha in the Gosho. Now, I want you, Mr. Hudson, I would like for you, sir, to turn to the Gosho. It's called the Capital of the Crease. And I want you to read the words of the Buddha so you can get an understanding. It's not just this actual proof. Actual proof just doesn't come up because you chant. But this is what it says. It says, quote, it says, in the Capital of Truth of the Crease, it says the true aspect of all phenomena can only be understood and shared between Buddhas. In the phrase, consistency from beginning to end, beginning indicates the root of evil and the root of good, and end indicates the outcome of evil and the outcome of good. One who is thoroughly awakened to the nature of good and evil from their roots to their branches and leaves is called a Buddha. Again, Mr. Hudson, it says, one who is thoroughly awakened to the nature of good and evil from their roots to their branches and leaves is called a Buddha. See, a Buddha is not somebody just up in the sky somewhere. A Buddha is simply an enlightened person. It goes on further. It says, Tentai stated, life at each moment is endowed with the 10 worlds. Chang stated, the Buddha intended these as his teachings. How could they ever be easily understood? Marlowe added that the principle is the ultimate revelation of his, Tentai's final and supreme teachings. The Lotus Sutra states the doctrines that they preach, quote, will never be contrary to the true reality. Tentai commented on this saying, quote, no worldly affairs of life or work are ever contrary to the true reality. A person of wisdom is not one who practices Buddhism apart from worldly affairs, but rather one who understands the principle by which the world is governed. Now, Mr. Hudson, what we must teach our people, or what we must teach anybody about the Buddhism, we must teach them how the world is governed. Now, if people do not understand the law of cause and effect, then they cannot change their life. They have to change their life by understanding the doctrine. But if you go around telling somebody this pie in the sky, all of a sudden you're going to get some actual proof, and you are not giving them the doctrine, then you are not teaching what the Buddha taught. Anyway, let me bring this lecture to a close. It's very difficult to understand the concept of enlightenment. It's very, very difficult. However, that's why we talk about the 10 worlds and you reach a level of enlightenment. But let me kind of give you a way, just in a common sense way of understanding the concept of enlightenment. Just less than a year ago, President Barack Obama, they asked him about same-sex marriage. And President Obama says, I am evolving on this issue. He said, I'm evolving. Now, what does that mean? He says, I am evolving. President Obama recognized that people have a right to marry who they like, and whether you agree or disagree with same-sex marriage, we as an enlightened society, we have to become evolved people. Now, for example, if you tell somebody, well, I got this job, or I got this big contract, and I showed actual proof, that is not actual proof. Just because you get a car, just because you get a contract, sir, that is not actual proof. Let me give you an example. Currently today, the eyes of the world and the eyes of America are on football players, NFL football players. Now, you had one football player that knocked his wife out in the elevator, and you got these guys having domestic disputes. Now, if, say, someone chanted and they got on the NFL team, as you say, Mr. Hudson, and they get on the NFL team, but yet they go knock their wife out, or one guy whoops his child to the point of brutality, our society does not accept those things anymore. You cannot beat on women anymore. You cannot just go act anyway anymore, even though you may have a big contract. But if you don't know how to live as a human, or you don't know how to live as an evolved person, for example, those NFL players, they are going to have to become evolved people. And say anyone who develops the Buddhist teachings, the way to go to Buddhahood, or the way to enter Buddhahood, is only through faith in what the Buddha teaches. Because the Buddha teaches you to do the right thing, to follow the law of cause and effect. And when you do the right thing's going to come to you. But you cannot always show that if you do right, or you do A, B, and C, the cause may not come about now, it may come about later, but it is not judged whether you have a car, or whether you have this, or whether you don't have. You can be a humble person, and you can be on your last leg and not have anything, but you still must have faith, because if you put faith in doing the right thing, right will happen. Because Nichiren says in the Gosho, I never seen a winter that did not turn into spring. So in your life, if you follow the law of cause and effect, the right things will happen. So what do we need to teach our people? We need to teach them the correct doctrine. Now, let me close this lecture with something from the Gosho. It says, the heart of the Buddha's lifetime of teachings is the Lotus Sutra. And the heart of the practice of the lotus is found in the never disparaging chapter. What does Bodhisattva never disparaging profound respect for people signify? It says, the purpose of the appearance of in this world of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of the teachings, lies in his behavior as a human being. Again, the purpose of the Buddha's advent is to show his behavior as a human. The Buddha was an evolved human being. To become an evolved human being is to become an enlightened human being. This is what the Buddha teaches. Thank you very much. Sutra! The Lotus Sutra! Boom, 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 boom. The Lotus Sutra! Boom, boom, boom. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. Let me pause on YouTube. Let me put you in my groove. Boom, 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 boom. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. I read a little sutra. Let me groove you. Let me